Hello everyone, welcome back to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jared Downey. Today on the show we have Nicholas Zwezwe. He is the Technical Director for Mining Projection Concepts, MPC, and this is part of our South African series. Dennis has been out on the floor at Electra Mining, and now he's out at MPC's actual offices in South Africa, helping us film these episodes, developing the topics. It's been a ton of fun. This is all part of our heavy industry tour, and a very big thank you to Savannah Equipment for being our tour sponsor, helping fund us to actually get here and do these episodes all around the world. Our next one is going to be under MIMO in Sudbury, September 18th to 21st. You might see this episode after that's already happened, and at IMARC, November 2nd to 4th. That's in Sydney, Australia. So if you want to be a part of any of those episodes, especially the one in Australia, because this will get released before then, just let us know. We'll have contact info. And again, thank you to our sponsor, Savannah Equipment. Okay, let's start the show. Nicholas, great to have you on. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and a privilege as well.
So how long have you been part of MPC?
MPC was formed in 2014. We had a couple of partners before, and at that time with the strategy of assisting operations with technical services. Then we grew massively between 2014 and 2018. And 2018, that's when I took full responsibility, if I should call it. And so since 2014, we've been consulting through different mining companies.
So what would you, we're going to talk about your services here shortly, and but what would you contribute to that sort of explosion in growth? Was it when the company started, was the industry quite active? Was it your approach, the network that you had built before the company got started? What were sort of the contributing factors to that growth?
The biggest contributing factor, because I was exposed to consulting environment, and I felt the need for most of the clients that needed such services. And I didn't want to limit the amount of services by region, by any red tape. So that's when I felt the need that I think we need to start something like this to assist as much clients as we can on consulting services.
Funny thing is, on this show, we've had people from all over the world, but we haven't had actually a ton of companies that do what you do. So again, just a preliminary question. In the mining world, when you're a consultant, and maybe specifically, how far is your reach? Do you stay within South Africa, or are you working with neighboring countries as well?
Okay, so let's give a special thank you to one of our longest sponsors of the show, Savannah Equipment. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Jared so that he can give you a little bit more info on Savannah Equipment.
Thank you. So, I mean, people see them as sponsors, so they'll ask me, kind of who they are, what they are, and just trying to understand the scope of the company. So Savannah Equipment is a mining supply company, and they're delivering on the whole equipment supply chain. So everything from the ore processing to underground mining, open pit. They're in hard rock and placer operations. And what they're doing is they're sourcing equipment from all over the world and then delivering it all over the world. Now, they are a Canadian company, so they're based there. But, let's say, they're selling entire ore processing plants. So there might be a plant down in Latin America, and there's a new mine that needs that plant in Africa or somewhere in the U.S. So they're facilitating that entire transactions. But they're also delivering, an individual conveyor or a concentrator or a pump package or just an electrical package. So it really is the whole gambit of the mining equipment supply chain.
I actually do have a question. I know you mentioned, they take care of the purchasing, the shipping worldwide. However, if you're looking for a particular mining equipment that they perhaps may not have on hand, can they actually facilitate that for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of their business because, and it's if you went on to SavannahEquipment.com, I'm a shameless plug for them, but if you go onto that website, you'll see just this huge array of equipment. So it's easier to think maybe there's like random people just uploading equipment. It's not. They put that equipment on. They're also finding particular pieces of equipment for people from all over the world going to all over the world again. So yes, people, you can reach out to them and contact them, and then they will source that equipment and get it to you as well.
Oh, that's great then. Well, then you definitely have to check them out. If you're looking for mining equipment, visit them at SavannahEquipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day. Momentum, the annual virtual Micromine conference, is coming up soon. This global event explores the technology, people, and initiatives that are changing the game across the industry and features educational sessions, interviews with industry leaders, and technology demos. Mining Now is excited to take part in the day's events and is even recording an exclusive panel interview for Momentum attendees. If you'd like to join, simply visit micromine.com and register. PowerZone carries a massive inventory of pumps, engines, generators, and compressors. However, they don't stop there. They combine imagination with world-class engineering. They detail the entire process to every customer. Their pump package testing facility ensures your equipment is landing on-site, ready to work. That is PowerZone. Start with inventory, develop with imagination, deliver with integrity, and it's all at powerzone.com. That is PowerZone. HF Sinclair, which includes the Petro-Canada Lubricants brand, is a proud sponsor of Mining Now. Petro-Canada Lubricants products and services are proven to maximize equipment performance, productivity, and overall savings. From heavy-duty engine oils to hydraulic fluids, ATFs, gear oils, and greases, Petro-Canada Lubricants is committed to delivering innovative solutions that deliver value and keep businesses moving. They have dedicated technical expertise, knowledge, and know-how to help customers in the mining industry operate smoothly with improved equipment, reliability, and performance. Learn more at lubricants.petro-canada.com or contact them at 1-866-335-3369 to arrange a call with one of their technical experts. CIM is the leading membership organization for technical content and creating connections in the mining industry. Mining professionals and students can access a breadth of technical expertise through the CIM Technical Paper Library, the WineMine Digital Repository, the CIM Journal, the CIM Magazine, and attend upcoming CIM webinars. Whether you're working in the field, in the office, or at home, join the community today and learn how they can help you achieve your professional goals. Visit them at cim.org.
Yes, we do work with multiple neighboring countries, as well as early this year we were assisting for a tender document to an Indian company, assisting an Australian-based company. Currently, I'm on my way to Ma'aden in Saudi Arabia. We do most of Africa from the north to the south, where I was in Egypt, Sukari last year. I was in recently Lumwana in Zambia. So it's we're not limiting ourselves to a region. We try to stretch our horizon as much as we can.
So in that context, then, very simply, what makes a good consultant in that industry?
I've never heard that question before, but thinking of it, I think the best judge for it will be the client that will be happy on the quality of your services and being able to keep you in mind whenever they need a particular deliverable. So I think the best person to answer that is a client with their satisfaction of your services.
When you're starting that relationship, though, like I looked at that, you're doing, mining engineering, processing, geology. You're covering a lot of angles. When you first start that relationship, what is it? How do you go about it? And I'm always sort of fascinated by this because in our business we have it. We have some gigantic multi-billion-dollar companies. Some of them they kind of get in the door on brand or recognition. And then they have to sort of prove it once they get the process going. In your case, when you're starting that first conversation that you have with a new client, you're talking about a mine in Egypt or in Saudi Arabia, what is that conversation like? Are you showcasing them past work that you've done? Is it about finding their problems? Sort of, can you paint a picture what those first conversations are like, uh, first starting that relationship with the client?
Majority of the work we do is it's from leads, where you find you've done work for a particular client and they would recommend you to someone who may need more of your services, and it becomes a lead or a link to another client.
Right.
In some cases, they would approach the one of our clients or one of our partners or associates and say, we need a service like this, but we don't know who can assist us. That's when we'll get the referral and say, I think I know someone who can. Get in touch with MPC and have a conversation with them and hear if they can assist you on that. So that's mostly how we reach out or we get reach from different clients.
And what is your strength as an organization? Where do you sort of shine?
I think mining engineering is our specialty. It's what we do the most. Most of the other fields is fields that we mainly work with partners and associates, but we don't want to leave a blank space or a blank page in the mining cycle from your exploration to the client services. I mean, to the marketing. We don't want to leave a blank space anywhere in between. So whenever there's a need for a particular a block or a particular slot, we will get someone who can assist in closing that slot.
And have you built? How have you built that network? By just your network within the industry over time, or do you sort of have? Are there sort of let's just say in South Africa alone? Are there sort of some key players that you know these are trusted people or companies that deliver the services to fill in all those gaps? How do you sort of choose who to work with to expand?
I think it's a matter of the because personally I've been in the consulting space for more than 6 years before starting MPC, and within that 6 years there's a lot of relationships that you build, a lot of synchronicity that you build with other professionals from other industries, where you link very well and you know that they can fit some of the puzzles that you need. And by building those relationships, now when we started MPC, those relationships were built, and we continued building them more by attending events, by going to a presentation to clients. And sometimes you find a client will build a project team, and when they build a project team, they will build it around professionals that they also know. And that's when you also learn to know some of them that you never knew. And you start knowing, oh, this person actually does this very well. And you keep a relationship with them. In future, if you need them, they're a phone call away to assist you.
Can you paint us a bit of a picture for the mining setup in South Africa, and if you can, even expanding into like Saudi Arabia and that? Is it in Canada? It's a small network. It's like a big industry, but a small network. You kind of, once you know, I would say about 10 to 20 key players in the industry, you're sort of connected to the whole thing in a way. Is it similar there, or is it a smaller? Is it even more tight knit? Is it more spread out? What is your sort of perception of the layout of the mining industry?
As people always say that the mining industry is so small because you somehow meet up with people that you've known before, and that it's like a cycle where we met 10 years ago, we did work together 10 years ago, we worked together 10 years ago, or you work with someone that I know 10 years ago and he told me about you.
Right.
And it becomes a cycle that those relationship gets created, But what I've realized and learned is that out of those relationships, the same consulting space, people know each other. The same mining space, people know each other. The minute I make a mistake or I don't give my professional services as I should, the whole industry will know about it without me realizing. And whenever I go to another client, they'll say, oh, is this Nicholas? Whether you did a good thing or a bad thing, then they will know about you. So it's small in that sense that it's spread like wildfire, but it's so big that there's so many operations and mines and services that they require. And unfortunately, you can't fulfill all of them. That's why there's so many of those consulting companies that are doing what they are doing.
Right. And so you're okay. So let's talk a little bit about the mining engineering specifically. Then 'cause you said that's sort of where you shine. Can you kind of walk us through that process, or maybe give us an example of what that would look like as a deliverable to your client?
True. I think I can talk for 2 days on this.
Well, we got time.
Am I allowed to?
Yeah, we got time.
Okay. From our space, it's where we shine, but it all starts from your applications, which we do as well. We apply for mining rights, we apply for mining permits, we apply for prospecting rights, and upon people getting those prospecting rights, we then do. I'm not gonna go for prospecting for now, as you ask specifically about mining engineering. We then would go and do some studies where you do your scoping studies for some of those resources that have been declared. And from those scoping studies, as a mining engineer, you then be able to evaluate if is it a go or a no go for certain projects. And if it is a go, that's when you give your input and say, for us to move it to the next phase, which is might be a pre-feas or a feasibility, but you can take it as far as your bankability, and you look at what do we need, what confidence do we have. You get contract rates, you get the actual, if they have to sink a shaft, you go and advise, get pricing for those, and you go and evaluate the whole value of that mining. Is it worth for me to advise someone that you can tomorrow go and start, and this is the NPVs to expect from it? So the scope is so big. That's just on a study side. Now you look on the operation side as well, where you find operations are running, but they will run and they'll come to problems not achieving what they expected, and they'll want your opinion. Why are we not achieving? What do we need to do for us to achieve what we? Then that's where you come in with your expert of advice and tell them what, based on your observation, based on your input. But I think the bigger other strength that for a good mining engineer is to understand the geology of any area, because without understanding that, your advice become too generic. It becomes too not specific to that particular client. So it's very big in scope, and unfortunately, not a couple of consulting firms can fulfill that. You need much more hands on the ground, or hands on that consulting services.
How about the technology side of it for you? I mean, how big of a play? I mean, I see that you Dassault. I think you worked with Dassault Systems at one point in your career. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And then we've had Geovia on the show, I think, and Dassault. We're going to release an episode with them here shortly. Can you talk a little bit, not specifically to them? I mean, please feel free to, but can you talk about the importance that, and sort of, not just the importance, but has all this technology been able to sort of elevate what you can deliver as a consultant, or how has it elevated it? Is probably a better question.
There's a saying that whenever something goes good, you'd say it's the best thing since sliced bread. So I would say technology is it's the best thing for any mining company or any mining industry, because it gives you quicker results. It gives you you can run multiple iteratives and get more options without having been manually to review or manually having to test a scenario. Because without technology, you find um, you are limited to only a certain number of iterations you can do or tests you can do. So for me, technology is the thing. But what is very important about it is the user must understand what they are doing. They must have a full understanding of what they are doing. It's one thing to know a button that executes a task, but it's one thing to understand how do I execute for that specific client. So
Right.
technology it plays a major role because it gives you options. You can play with a lot of options and present them to any client and let the client decide, I'm gonna go with this one because it fulfills certain needs for me.
This actually opens up a really important topic, and I think of it more from, I use this example quite a bit on the show, is we work on the production side. So in production, you can't buy your way out of a problem. If you don't have the right tools, it's not going to work. You can buy $100,000 machine. If it's not the right setup, it's still not going to do what you need it to do. And then if you get the right setup and you don't have the technical expertise or don't put in the proper training or take the proper time and do the proper tests, setup still won't work. So
That's true.
and I'm wondering, in the mining industry now, with all of this development, is there sometimes, and I'll try to get this question right, is there sometimes a disconnect of the customer's expectations because the technology is there, but the skill to use that technology is a tougher implementation, maybe than they're even expecting? For example, in our business, someone will say, "Hey, can you do this, this, and this?" And the answer is usually yes, but they're not understanding what they're actually asking us to do with the equipment that we have. They just know that it can be done. Is there any sort of that disconnect there? If I'm making sense with that question.
Yeah, you're making a lot of sense. Yes, it's a sad reality, but you find it a lot where an operation or a mine will go and invest in a software where they spend over millions of rands, and they will then take someone to train that someone on a software, and they'll spend other millions of rand on training that person to execute or to be able to operate this particular software. But you find a bigger disconnect where this someone understands the buttons of the software but cannot link the needs of the client with the buttons.
Yeah.
And that is it's a fatal connection. It's a fatal link because that someone agrees that yes, I know how to do that, but without an understanding of what is expected of him. But because he knows that there's a button that runs a reserve calculation, but not knowing that, no, I have to do manipulations, do cutoffs, do mine design criteria, apply mine design criteria on my reserve before I execute them. But when I went to training, they showed me a button that if you press this button, you get results. You get a resource statement. But without knowing that there's iteratives that you must do to suit whatever the requirement is. But because I know a button, then I know a button. It means I know the task. That doesn't necessarily mean you know what is expected.
Right. Yeah, it's something you see quite a bit across a lot of different industries. So are you? I guess how do you communicate that? Because I guess the next part of that is if two people show up and one says, "Yeah, well, I know how to hit that button," well, you can probably hit that button for a quarter of the price than someone that's coming there with this I mean, again, we see it in our business. If you just show up with a phone without the proper mics and the proper, we're connecting back to a studio, a professional studio here. If you don't do all of that, you can do a version for probably a quarter of the price. Do you run into that same thing where the expertise is taken to do it right, but there's that one, the one who can just hit that button. Now they're coming in, but it's really not the same thing, even if they're using the same software.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a reality of it, where you come up with a price and the client will say, "No, you are too expensive. I know someone next door who can do it cheaper than you."
Mm-hmm.
And not knowing or understanding that someone who can do it cheaper can either not understand the scope or can either not know what is expected of those deliverables.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that a lot. Not that the pricing for me or for us plays a bigger role. The pricing for us becomes insignificant. The
Right.
biggest driver for us is the quality of the work. We need to understand what we need to deliver. I can do it for free if I have to, but I need to deliver quality. There, we cannot compromise on it.
Right.
We have to understand the scope. We have to deliver on quality. I can do it for 20 cents if I have to, but let me deliver on quality. That 20 cent must be quality, where you find in most cases a client will say, "No, please increase your price. You're charging less than that client and your service, I'm happy with it." And that's
Mm-hmm.
what we want.
Right.
We want people to know the quality that you give us is what we need. The price doesn't become much of a driver. The understanding of what is needs to be delivered becomes the driver.
Mm-hmm. Is there a project for you, that really stands out, that sort of encompasses what you're capable of and got the results that the client expected?
Whew. Let me open my book. How many are there? Most of our projects that we do, when you get feedback from a client that they are happy with your service and they keep on coming back for your service, there's nothing fulfilling than that. There's nothing um, joyful, more joyful than that. You get joy out of seeing the client happy about your service and appreciating your service, appreciating the knowledge that you encompass and share with them. There are multiple or couple of highlights for us, but the bigger one, which reached, which touched the heart for us, was a chrome operation which was based in Rustenburg area, which is a more platinum chrome area, and it was in 2018 where we had to. The mine was on care and maintenance, and from that care and maintenance, we had to restart the operation from getting data from closure plans, doing resurveys, from trig beacons, bringing it back to the operation, um, doing your feasibilities of that operation to see what NPVs to expect out of it, doing from geological modeling actually, um, doing NPV calculations for them to see what expected revenues they must have. That was pre operations, and when they had to start operation, we were tasked to start for them a technical services team, and we had to recruit from surveyors, environmentalists, uh, geologists, mining engineers, and start a team with scope. With operating procedures for each team, uh, get softwares for those teams, get necessary technology for them, uh, train them because most of them were locals, especially the lower level income were locals, had to train them from
Mm-hmm.
nothing. It was a longer term project, because we were there till beginning of COVID, just before the beginning of COVID. Um, but it was a bigger highlight because we had to create systems that never existed. There was never a system in place at the time because the mine was on care for more than 5 years. So we couldn't get anything from anyone. No one knew where is what, where we had to create procedures for the operations, where to from nothing. were to create reports, daily reports, management reports, reports required by clients, from nothing. There was basically nothing. And it grew from just being a technical team that we developed. And we later realized there was a disconnect between operation mining and processing plant, because we were never reconciling on what was produced versus the product that the plant was receiving or claimed to have received and produced out, which is a typical mining problem. Or then we had to then start a lab where we had to, from nowhere, get someone who's experienced in lab, get him into our team. And from that someone, we then started building a laboratory where we get the equipment, necessary equipment, build procedures out of it, had to look at how do we sample and what is the frequency of our sampling, and how do we reconcile those samples, the turnaround time from the lab, deliverables from the sample time to delivery to where to also sample the client whenever they come and collect, reconcile with the client on at the port whenever they've delivered, wherever they are delivering to the client site. So the lag became another bigger factor, but that lag extended even further, where we now saw the management saw the need that the service that we offer should extend to a weigh bridge, because there is a weigh bridge. They just catch the slip. It's just a tick box where they just, oh, there's a truck. It came in empty. Yes, I've ticked that box. It came out. Here's the weight of when it came out, and that's it. Then we'll get the sample results whenever we've sampled, but there's no recon from the operation all the way to the client on how the material moved and how much went to the discard, how much went to the dump, how much was actually saleable, and how much moisture contributed to that saleable of the product. So we then had to be involved in the weigh bridge as well, where we look at the reconciling. Our biggest duty was the reporting. We had to make sure that the reporting talks to what is on the ground declared from resource and reconcile in every step. We then had to, the last leg was us running the control room reporting system, where we had to now create, because we've now created all these mini reports, but then we need the central heart where these reports get controlled or managed, or hourly reports, daily reports, shift reports. And the biggest achiever for us was, from those reports, would be able to report from the drilling of the face, the blasting of the face, the loading, and how much was run of mine, and how much was fed to the plant, how much discard was moved, how much was saleable to the clients. And this would be able to report it on a shift by shift basis, where we ended up with the CEO every morning or every end of shift. The only question he'll ask us is, what is my run pattern for that shift? What is my loading run pattern? What is my, and that's, he was only interested in that. How much did it cost me to operate in this previous shift?
Wow.
And because of all this work that you do, it's irrelevant for him. For him is, I need to get to the bottom of it, which is, how much did it cost me to operate in this shift? Did that operation for loading, how much did it cost me just as a loading operation? So we were able to break it down on run pattern. I mean, we had templates of those reports where we're reporting on a run pattern basis. And it's so fulfilling when you get to that. But there's so much work, much work you put. I mean, we used to be at the mine every morning at 4 a.m. We'd leave the mine at 11 p.m. because we had to make sure we have covered all bases. Our reputation is on the line here. We have to cover all bases. We have to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for us, that is the biggest highlight. It was the biggest highlight, I would say.
That's amazing. And it started off as a much smaller scope and then just kept evolving.
It kept on growing, yes.
You know, it's funny that you just mentioned, starting at 4 a.m. and ending at 11. But just before we came on air, while we were waiting to set up, Gowdy and I were talking about people's work ethic and that sort of thing as we're growing our team. And I'm always curious. I've seen kids that growing up they weren't like these like driven type people, but as they got older, it's like they kicked in, they found a gear, and then they become these quite ambitious. You see people that just sort of seem to have it in them, or you see some people where it's very like nurtured into them. Where does that? I've been around the mining industry long enough to know that it's not just this easy industry to live up to all the expectations, deliverables, fix mistakes, sort of exceed expectations. That sort of drive on that type of project. You might be able to start at 4 in the morning, but you might wrap up at 6. Where did that sort of drive come for you? Or are you originally from the mining sector? What sort of brought you into the industry, and what sort of gave you that sort of drive to put that type of effort into the deliverables?
All right. On the first part, yes, I am from the mining industry. I grew up in a mining town, and by default, if you grow up in a mining town, it becomes the most default thing for you to work at the mine. So, but the drive for us was the biggest drive was being afraid to fail or being afraid to not want to disappoint. That's the one thing we took very delicate care of, that we don't want to mess this. It's the one opportunity that we cannot mess. We need to make sure that it's executed to the T.
Right.
And that was the bigger drive. I mean, when you wake up, you're just thinking of just waking up. You're not thinking, oh, no, I'm leaving my bed now. You're just thinking of, I need to do this. I need to do that. I don't have enough time. I need to do that and that. I don't have enough time. I mean, even on those long days, you find you don't get time to even eat. You realize when you have to drive back to your room or wherever you are that, oh, I didn't eat today. Okay, let me eat something. But because you have these things that you are chasing to fit this puzzle to, your end goal, but you need to get these pieces together. And what is more difficult, more than the work itself, is dealing with people. Because people have got their own way of thinking, own way of perception, own way of understanding things on how they want things. Now, if you have to get this puzzle together, but you have to go through different characters, that is the most difficult part. That is the most difficult, more than the work itself where you have to deliver.
Yeah.
So for us, the drive was mainly, let's get this thing right.
Yeah, I like a word that you use there, different characters, because a lot of time we'll use the word personality, which is a little kind of a boring word for that, but it's the mining industry or any industry, any environment you go to. When you walk into a room, it kind of is full of characters. And you don't know sort of what you're getting, what character you're getting when you start that relationship, and it's quite interesting. But sort of what you're getting at is that time period. Like, how long did that go for? Those long hours in that project, like that lasted. You said like over like 3 years.
Yeah. From 20 actually started in 2016. Yeah, 2016. That you get to a point where where you have now achieved your objective, which is get that report that gives the CEO the rent per ton every shift.
Right.
Or if he wants to pull out per team, per crew, per environment, you can pull it out quickly. But the biggest difficulty is now somebody has to maintain that, has to keep it running, has to make sure all these puzzles still fit together. There's no character that decides today, I'm going to do it differently, or I'm not going to pitch for work today, or no, I'm going to mess it up for you. So you have to now make sure that before this report goes out, there are checks and balances that are down. Now maintaining it becomes a full-time job, more than creating it.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing process, and like you said, I mean, I'm sure you could talk about it for a couple days, and we still wouldn't cover every angle of it. But just before I let you go, I just wanted to ask about just sort of the business. Is it a cyclical business that you're in as well? Does it go from? I always think of it. It's kind of like no one will phone you for a day, and then at 2 o'clock, four people will all phone at one time. Is it a little bit like that? The business you're in?
Yes, there are quiet moments where no one calls, but for us, we take that opportunity to cover up on some of the work that we are behind with, or because sometimes you get to a client and they ask you specifically for one, two, three, and you realize, oh, okay, I think this client will be interested in four, five, six as well.
Hmm.
But I'm not gonna commit to it because it requires me to have time for that.
Right.
So whenever we have those gaps or moments, that's when we go back to, okay, client number so and so, we did one, two, three for you. Here's four, five, six that you may still be interested in or you may look
Right.
into. So there are moments of quietness, definitely, but we try and keep the flow going. We keep in contact with our clients. If we have to do a site visit to a client,
Mm.
that's one thing we do a lot actually. We prefer to be on the client's face rather than being in the office and let the clients come to us, let the
Hmm.
clients, oh, what on the phone call, oh, what do you need today? Okay, we'll do it for you. We prefer to go to the clients, go to the mines, go on the ground, go to the pits, go look at the operation, see what is really happening, not sit in an lavish office and okay, I know what they want
Hmm.
without you seeing there, without you being there. So we take that time. If there is that moment, we utilize it fully for the clients, even if it's just for our benefit, but also for the clients to appreciate the effort that we're putting in.
Hmm. Well, Nicholas, I mean, it's I have, and we get quite a few people on the show that that they're quite passionate about the industry. We've had people that are not from the industry at all. I had someone on a little while ago. He did not come out of the industry at all. He almost just stumbled into it. Kind of looked at a list and went, "Sure, I'll do that." And then people like yourself that come out. You come out of a mining town, but there's something about the industry that sort of ignites this passion in people, and I feel like you sort of encompass that in this interview. So yeah, thank you for coming on. I hope you come on again. As I know you're pushing to grow your company, which of course is part of the reason coming on this episode. So I hope we get to do it again as you continue to grow.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the host. Thank you, Dennis, for for all the communication. And I really appreciate the platform. And I'll definitely do it again in a year's time. Let's see the growth, and we'll definitely do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Yeah, there was a lot. I feel. I hope I did Nicholas justice there because I know he has a ton of knowledge about the industry, and if he does it again, I am going to plan it out so we can talk about some very specific parts, and he can sort of map them out, maybe some visual stuff and that. Um, but I hope I kept up with him somewhat in this interview. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And as Nicholas mentioned, thank you to Dennis. Thank you for Gowdy. It's been multiple nights now that we've been here in the middle of the night producing these episodes. So we really do appreciate the effort our team is putting in. We will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.